How fast are stores shuttering their space?
Well, some are closing fairly rapidly, but I think that the death of retail has been grossly exaggerated. Just as some of the more recent resurgence we've seen has been a little bit, people have been a little too optimistic about that. But the reality is there'll be winners and losers like there are in any environment, and some of the traditional retailers who do quite well for a very long time. The pressures that we've seen will continue, but sort of the imminent demise of most of these companies is not in the works.
Yeah, and Brian, I don't think we're talking about the death of retail here so much. The thing was death of the mall, and that's an exaggeration, of course. But can retail survive, even flourish with a lot less space? I want to put up a bar chart here actually showing the growth per capita of square footage in retail. It's gone ramped up enormously, and also if you compare it with Europe, we have a lot more store space compared to Europe.
Yes, I would certainly agree. The U.S. overall is over-retailed. The number of stores relative to the retail spend, particularly considering the growth of Amazon and e-commerce players, we do have an excess of retail locations. However, the quality retail locations, the A-quality malls, the centers with high sales productivity are actually performing quite well in this environment and are able to gain share from the B and C quality locations, which are the ones most vulnerable to the growth of e-commerce and the challenges faced by the overall retail environment.
Right, which brings to the opportunity. So we have a chart that shows the Bloomberg's mall REIT index versus the REIT index and the underperformance that we've seen of those mall REITs. To go with what Brian was just saying, Jerry, where would you then target the opportunities in the mall space?
Well, I agree with what he said. There are A players, and there are companies that are not A players. You have a mall developer like Taubman. They're almost all A malls. Simon is very strong. Very good malls. Some of the others are not so strong. And so the A real estate is of limited supply and inexorable demand, whether it's for department stores 10 years ago or whether it's for themed restaurants in the future and entertainment venues. I'm not worried even a little bit about the A real estate in this country. Keep in mind that the population continues to grow and the real estate does not continue to grow. Similarly, when you look at the retailers, you have retailers that are going to succeed in almost any environment. Those that are low-cost producers, some like Costco or TJX. These guys are fantastic. They do well no matter what happens. Someone who is more vertical, has a higher own label component, they're not really subject to the same pressures as retailers who simply sell goods that others manufacture and are, in essence, wholesalers whose product can be footballed over the internet. So there's still opportunity for pluses and minuses, winners and losers, in both the landlord, or that is property market, as well as the retail market.
Right, it's easy to find the A players, Brian, but then if you want to make money, you got to find the B and the C's that are going to become A's. So where is the opportunity? And I know that some private equity firms are looking, say, at warehousing. That's going to be the opportunity. Is that going to be like the next step for the B and C's?
Yeah, well, one of the overlooked aspects of what's happening with the growth of e-commerce is the impact that has on distribution warehouses, and the growth in that environment has been tremendous. If you look at rental rate growth in 2017 in the warehouse sector, it's been over 10% in some of the coastal markets, and that's in an environment where inflation is only 2%. So the growth of e-commerce has had positive implications for that sector of the real estate market. And a company like Prologis, which is the largest owner of industrial warehouses globally and a large holding in our real estate fund, is well positioned to take advantage of development opportunities and rental rate growth opportunities driven by the supply changes within e-commerce distribution and overall growth of demand for warehouse space.
So Jerry, I understand you believe retail certainly is not dying, and you also believe the A areas are really good. But let's talk about the B's and C's, because there's a lot of space in those B's and C's. Do you agree that there's too much space in retail right now in the B's and C's?
Well, for sure in the U.S., and many times you showed the chart, many times the retail square per capita what there is elsewhere in the world. But many of these spaces are still valuable. That's the point.
Sure.
So the real estate underlying these malls, is still very valuable. That's why they were put there to begin with. Many of these Bs, for example, they'll become mixed-use developments. With residential, with office space, with lots of coffee shops and yogurt bars and whatever else is hot at the moment. Raw sushi, poke stops, whatever it is. All on the ground level. So this real estate will be repurposed. So I'm not worried about any of that at all. Some of this, when you get to C's and D's, then you're dealing with spaces that probably never should have been built. It's like somebody looked at a map of Indianapolis and said, well, the north is good, which it is, so why not put one in the southeast quadrant, the southwest quadrant as well, and kind of fill out the map when there never should have been a mall built in some of those locations. And that space, I don't know, I guess it'll be Burlington Coat Factory, dentist office, places to get your CAT scans.
So Brian, can you put a rough number approximately on how much space has to be repurposed? I mean, is it 5%, 10%, 25%?
Well, when we look at the mall landscape in the U.S., there are over 1,000 malls in the U.S. I would argue that at least 300 of those malls are structurally obsolete to some degree. And it can take a while for that space to be repurposed and put it to better use, but we think that over the next 5 to 10 years, you could see 300 malls repurposed. An important point here as well is that for the A malls, there's an opportunity to bring other uses into the malls that are more relevant to consumers. So think about health, wellness, entertainment, services are replacing some of the apparel uses in malls and making those centers more relevant to millennials and today's consumer. And the last thing I noticed this morning, Simon Property Group, which is one of our top holdings, announced that they're partnering with Marriott Hotels to open 5 new Marriott hotels in Simon malls over the next few years. So you're seeing increasing mixed use opportunities within the better malls for hotels, apartments, and other uses that can replace some of the struggling department stores or other less relevant retail uses.
Jerry, we couldn't have a retail segment here without talking about e-commerce, even if it's about malls. Tell me about a different kind of mixed use. Are we seeing a mixed use where people are in malls, but it's actually an e-commerce site where you could go into a traditional retailer and actually interact with the internet and buy things that way? Are you seeing that? Is anyone doing that, and are they doing it successfully?
Well, the internet infuses everything, so there's no doubt that people will be on their mobile phones, I promise you, all the time, including when they're in the stores. But by the time a customer gets to the store, if they're there to shop, they want to shop and they want to take the product home. I think it is the height of arrogance on the part of retailers to think that customers would actually go to the mall in order to order something from their website. That just doesn't happen. What does happen, however, is that there's an integrated or so-called omni-channel or all-channel model where the stores and the internet are linked. So, for example, the customer will buy online, go to the store to pick it up. This is particularly valuable if you want to try something on. So you buy online, go to the store, try it on the dressing room, and decide that it fits or you need a different size or whatever might be there. Or for a convenience type purchase where you want all the work done for you, so you go to the store, pick it up, and leave. So, and increasingly, we talked about distribution earlier, increasingly the stores themselves are becoming distribution centers, and they're well located, that's for sure. So instead of building freestanding distribution centers, more and more retailers are shipping a high percentage of their goods, particularly during peak periods, out of those stores that are sitting there. One other point I really want to make, we're talking about malls almost entirely here, but it isn't so much just the malls that matter, it's all the space around them, because the malls tend to be kind of the hub and spoke for an individual trade area or neighborhood where you've got zillions of other locations, retail locations, restaurants, other things that depend on that mall for an ecosystem to survive. And as those B and C malls start to die off, those stores around them will also start to close, and all of that space needs to be repurposed, and there's a lot more of that than there is mall space.